Okay, we are recording and I am broadcasting.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday, the 24th of September, virtual public meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission. I'll do a quick roll call. This is the chair, Glenn Richards, and on attendance, we have Mr. Peter McNamee, and Mr. Joe Morgan, Ms. Patricia Pecknick. Mr. Ron Ziemba is in the meeting, but we're not getting Ron's audio. So Ron, if you can sort that out, that would be really helpful. And we were informed before the meeting that two of our members, Mr. Christopher Fay and Malcolm Conworth, will be absent. We do have a quorum, but we do want would be very helpful to have Ron sort out that audio situation there. So I wonder if there's a,
do we have a cell phone for him?
yes. Someone wants to call. Let's see, hang on a second. This is, if anyone's, Peter,
Probably
you
shouldn't.
feel like doing that so I can, yeah.
Yeah, but you might want to text it to me. I don't think you should say it.
Okay. All right. And I see, yeah, he's in the thing there. Okay. Okay. So on tonight's agenda, we have one demolition delay hearing or item. That's the 123 State Street. Crane Properties represented by me, Tolman, and Costa. Caitlin, is Ms. Mead representing them tonight or someone else? Do we know?
She is.
Okay. All right. So this is just so everyone's on the same page. This is a determination whether it is historically significant and preferably preserved, and if so, demolition plan hearing, which will be a public hearing with public comment allowed and so forth. Typically, I know, Ms. Mead, you will get into both the historic significance and somewhat of the plans as one thing. And so I'll just let you go ahead and present now. And even though those, I'm sure those will be commingled, but I think that'll be okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission. Lisa Mead, Telling Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of Crane Properties, LLC. And with me this evening, who's also participating in the presentation, is Bill Nolan of Savoy Nolan Architects. As the chair suggested, we're here for a demolition delay review and a determination of historical significance and hopefully an approval of our plans so we can move forward. This is a partial building demolition. The applicant's proposing to remove the rear portion of the property, which is a later added addition, in addition to demolition of a portion of the rear wall where the addition will be put on, and a portion of the bump out that's on the right or southerly side of the structure. The rear portion to be removed is not part of the original structure. It's constructed poorly, doesn't integrate well with the original structure, as we'll see on the photographs shortly, is in disrepair and is unsafe. The proposed addition entirely behind the existing structure adds only an additional 466 square feet to what currently exists. The addition will be finished with the same reveal and details appropriate for the period, and we have a lot of details to go through on that, which Bill will do. The house was constructed around 1875, according to the district data sheets, and is described as a second Empire cottage, which is quite clear from its design. There is no Form B available. The earliest Sanborn map, which I'll show in a little while, shows the structure is from around 1914. Because of the location of the Sanborn maps, there wasn't one available prior to that, but we're not doubting the 1875. I'm just saying that that's when it shows on the Sanborn map. The structure of the form on the map appears to be similar to what exists today, but when you view the structure in person, it shows...
Unmuting. I'm starting the video.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's Ron Ziemba. Thank you, Ron.
That's good. He's back. That's good. So we're going to go through this in a little bit, but the addition that we're taking off while there is an addition on these Sanborn maps, I think that the Sanborn maps reflect obviously an earlier addition or maybe even the bump out that exists on the back, but we can talk about that. According to the architect, Mr. Nolan, it appears that the most recent addition was in the 1980s based upon the material that was used. Nonetheless, obviously the main part of the structure is certainly historic. So if you could go to the photographs next, please. Thank you. So here's a photo from across the street. Obviously you can see the Second Empire details of the cottage. It's nicely framed with those trees. And you go ahead, please, Caitlin. So this is the northerly side. And then I tried to get as many details of the various significant aspects to the structure as possible. There is a slate roof. We're keeping the slate roof. Bill's going to go on about that in a little bit. And again, some of the details that are all staying and being cleaned up and repaired. So here we are in the back, and you can see the decking that goes in the back. That brick foundation is staying. We're not taking that off. I think that's the addition that you see on the Sanborn maps, but it's not. It's really not clear. You can go to the next one, please. But you can see this wood frame addition. That's what's coming off. And that's obviously the more recently added addition. And you can see how it's not connected well or integrated well with the existing structure. And that's a rear view. You get a really nice picture of the run of the decking there. And here's the Sanborn map that we were able to find. So you can see there's that bump out in the back. Maybe it was an earlier addition in the same location that we're taking off the current addition. It could be that brick bump out. I'm not really sure. Nonetheless, obviously we're here. We're taking off the more current rear addition, but not the brick foundation addition. And then we have the assessor's map, which also shows the structure. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over here to Bill, who's going to go over what we're proposing to demolish on the structure.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes.
great. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. So this is the existing / demolition elevations for the house, just so I can walk you through. And we're looking at the front elevation, which is number 1 on this plan. We're really not proposing to do anything and haven't counted anything against our demolition there. The only modification that we'd be making or propose to make is the existing doors are no longer going to be needed. So we're proposing to replace those doors with windows to match the windows that are on the front facade. And you'll see that in the proposed elevations. So we're not really proposing to do anything on the front. All the existing details, this was a question by the board that was sent in to us at the last meeting. All the existing architectural details, dentals, corbels, things like that, we're proposing to remain. So they may not be 100% detailed on our drawings. We're not replacing any of that. If we move on to the second drawing, existing side, oh, I'm sorry, could you go back to number 2 on this drawing, which is the side elevation or the salt elevation. The easy one to understand is the back addition that Lisa was talking about, labeled on it's to the right of the page. That's that 2-story addition that doesn't blend well and is not original to the Second Empire cottage. So that's what we're planning on removing. The other pieces that we're counting towards our 25% is we are planning on extending the bump out to the left and replace the windows that are there now, the jalousie windows, which are not which were added on later and not common to this particular period. We're proposing to remove those. And in order to do that, the window sizes that we're going to put in are going to match the existing window sizes and are bigger than the window openings that we're removing. So we've tried to take a conservative approach to this and counting those window openings as part of the existing walls that we're removing. So if you have any questions on that after I get through this, I'd be happy to answer it. It's not as straightforward as to, I'm sure there can be a couple questions there. Lastly, it's hard to see, but on the dormer above, on the right side at the roof level, you'll notice that there's a little crosshatch up there on the dormer cheek wall. Again, we were trying to be conservative and count everything that we're removing. You'll see that there's some crosshatch there. If we move on to the next drawing now, this will be more clear why. Okay, so now we're on the existing rear elevation, number 1 on the page. And you can see at the lowest level, 2-story piece in the back, which we're removing. That's the easy thing to notice. We are punching through, and the addition that we're proposing to put on is bigger than the one that we're removing. So we will be punching through. So you'll notice a crosshatch area on the first floor, which is the middle floor on the rear elevation, first floor level. We've included some square footage there to account for that punching through. To the left of that, on the bump out to the left from the rear elevation, this is the southerly bump out that we were talking about. To extend that, we have to remove the back portion of that. And then we're going to be adding on, if allowed, to the structure to match. It's going to match its detail. It's going to match its size. It's just going to be pulled closer to the rear elevation, I believe 3 or 4 feet. I'll get specifics on that after. And on the highest level, the roof level, you'll see the 2 dormers there. Those are punching through. This is going to be a 2-story piece or a 3-story piece, including the garage that we're proposing to add on there, and you'll see in the next slides. This was going to be at the highest level at the roof. We're punching through those existing dormers. The rest of the roof is going to remain. I think there are a total of 3 dormers on the back, and we're proposing to remove it. They're going to all be covered, but we're proposing to punch through those 2 existing dormers. So we've included the face square footage as well as the cheek wall square footage, again, just to be consistent. Lastly, on the existing is we're number 2 on this page. Again, all the way to the left is the part that we're removing, the easier part. We're not proposing any major modifications to this side. The one thing we'll point out is in the proposed plans, we have a staircase that will be crossing that lowest window on the, it's kind of in the center of the building. You can see I have some text with an arrow pointing to it. A staircase, a stair stringer will be bisecting that window. So what we'd like to do is remove the glass and replace it with a panel. The opening will stay. We're just gonna replace it with a wood panel to mimic the window opening. So again, the brick opening will stay. We're just gonna put an opaque panel in front of it. Instead of a window, it'll be a panel. And that will allow the stair to bypass through it without any awkwardness.
And that's just as an aside, that stair's on the inside.
Yeah, yes, right. Thank you. So that's, I think, the extent of the existing / demolition. If we want to go to the proposed real quick, I can walk you through that, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just ask one quick question now on the one page prior. Actually, I think it's one page prior. Can you go? Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
The drawing on the left, the number 1. Why wouldn't, I mean, it seems to me if you're building a 2 or 3 story addition, depending on how you look at it, on the second story where you going, you've shaded the two window / dormer things. It seemed they don't really seem like dormers to me, but I guess they're called dormers. Why wouldn't you also be removing the wall between those?
No.
Or is your addition are those just going to be doors into the addition?
Yeah, so the addition's gonna, good question, thank you. The master, it's gonna be the master bedroom suite, and the master
Mhm.
bedroom suite is kind of contained in almost entirely within the new volume.
I see.
The dormer to the right on the rear elevation is
Mhm.
actually the door into the bedroom, and the dormer to the left will actually be a punch through to the master bathroom.
I see.
So yeah, we wouldn't be removing any of the walls, so that's why we didn't include it. In fact, as an aside, we continued to this meeting because we were slightly over the calculations. Again, taking a conservative method, Lisa and I had to get some clarification on how these were calculated. We adjusted the amount of space, the amount of punch through that we were having up at that higher level to bring the calculations into more favorable, so that we're slightly under the max. So
Yeah, well, it's kind of it does get complicated because on the
Yeah.
one hand, I mean, I assume obviously there'll be roof demolition because you're not going to be leaving the slates there in the master bedroom on the one hand. But on the other hand, as I understand the ordinances, if you're, opening up a wall because you're putting an addition there, it's almost like they don't consider that demolition.
Hmm.
I'm sure Ms. Mead has run into that before. So, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, do I count that or not? So I can understand where that would be a little ambiguous. But anyway, all right. I think you've answered the question. Did you want to say something, Ms. Mead?
No, go right. I'll go ahead. We'll let Bill go ahead and talk
Mhm.
about
yeah,
the
so
proposed.
what I was going to say is the actual wall, and we got this clarification from I think Jennifer and um, is going to remain as is. We're not taking that down.
Right.
You're right about the slate, and actually I'm hoping that it's a benefit to us and that we can repurpose it on the
Right.
existing and use it to blend in. So
Yep.
we will be repurposing the slate if possible. It's a fair point, and we did ask those questions.
Yep.
And I think
Okay.
this is what we arrived at. So if you, unless you have anything to add, Lisa, we can move on to the proposed conditions.
No, I would go ahead and go on to the proposed.
Okay, great. So this is the front, and you can see, I think the only real change here would be the doors being replaced with the windows. And everything else, all the details are going to remain, and it looks very similar. It'll look identical to what's out there. We are proposing, and I'm sure this will be a question, so I'll just address it now. We are proposing to re-side the building. It's got existing asbestos siding on it, which is not original to the building. We're proposing to remove that and replace it with clapboard siding. But we are intending to keep the existing slate roof. What we would like to do is clean it and prep it, and then the new roof is going to be a slate roof to complement it. So there's really not a lot here on the front elevation. It stays pretty much as is. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, this is the southerly exposure. You can see the about show a dashed line. It says existing mudroom and then the proposed extension. It's about a 3.5 foot extension. And we've replaced the Eloise windows with new 2/2 windows to match the existing style of the house. There'll be a complete window replacement too. We're looking to do a Marvin window with SDLs that will 2/2 to match the existing style of the cottage. We did do some research on Second Empire, and 2/2s are one of the window styles that they've used. I've also done some research. The interesting thing, if you guys care about the Second Empire, is that they did, and one of the, some of the research that I've uncovered was they gave the builders and designers and architects and owners a little bit more freedom than other styles where the rules were a little bit more ambiguous. And thus you see a lot of differences in the Second Empire styles. For example, the siding. I did some research on what the siding is for those, and I saw everything from stucco to brick and masonry, and to clapboard siding. So this is one of the styles that is, part of the language that's there. So that's what we're proposing to do.
Quick question, Mr.
Sure.
Nolan, the existing windows, they're not original, are they? Are they replacements? Windows that are there now?
There's a mix. There's certainly ones that have been replaced. So I don't think that they are original. There may be some things up in the arches that potentially be original, but I don't think so. The majority of the windows in the building seem to have been replaced at least once or twice. The jalousie windows, for example, weren't even around when this was built. And,
Right. Yeah, we know those aren't original.
Yeah. So we're intending to keep the existing openings. We're just putting in new construction windows, Marvin, and we're going to match the details of the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
So if that answers your question, I'll move on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to that one more time? So the back, the rear addition there, you'll see it's a garage level at the very bottom, a kitchen extension. The current kitchen is in the bump out that we're removing, and we're replacing it with a nicer kitchen. And you can see that the addition that we're building on the back mimics the same detailing of the Second Empire. So we're reverting it back to that type of language. Now we can go on to the rear elevation. You can see the garage doors with the deck above it. The staircases are tucked to the side. We're matching the same, the upper level is what's going to be kitchen with a pair of glass doors emptying out to the deck. And the upstairs is a slate roof, and we're matching the dormer details. And those two windows, the left side are in the master bedroom, and the one to the right is a little like loft space up there. And we're matching the same details with the dormers. And then I think lastly is the north face. There's not a lot of change on the existing Second Empire house. The back addition, where you see the dimension string, it's got the existing to remain. Everything to the left of that is new construction, and you can see we're matching the existing details on the house. So in a lot of ways, the stuff that we're adding is more in keeping with the true architecture, the Second Empire cottage style of the house.
And the roof line, it looks on, I mean, I'm kind of squinting at it. Is it slightly, is the ridge of the addition slightly below the existing ridge? It's a little hard to tell.
I don't think that that's our intention. It might be the, well, we're matching the details. So whatever the pitch is of the top roof, it's going to be the same pitch there. And if the proportion of the back addition is slightly different, it would result in a lower roof pitch. We are not going to go over it, so I can tell you that. Yeah. And our intent is to match the up. In a mansard roof, you've got two roof pitches,
right?
And our intention is to match those pitches identical. And if the volume for the back isn't the same proportion as the volume in the front, it appears, if what you're seeing is a slightly lower ridge, that's what I'm guessing at. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, sort of. I'm just surprised that you sound like you don't know if it's lower or not.
I can find out for you if you give me a couple minutes. You've got some other questions. I can find out definitively. Not a focus of mine. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's just something that usually is called out, ridge heights and all being a
So I
thing.
can tell you that we're not going over the existing
Right.
ridge, and I can tell you that we're gonna match the existing roof pitch to the extent
Right.
that's the correct way to do it,
Mhm.
unless you, yeah, that's the correct way to do it. So it may be slightly lower.
May I ask a question too for clarification?
Sure.
You had said the new roof is going to be a slate roof. I think what I understood previously to that statement was that the roof is going to be this slate roof, but you said the new roof is going to be slate. So can you, on the main historic structure, will there be a new slate roof, or
No.
is this the slate roof, but it will be repaired and cleaned and all that?
Great question. Thank you. The existing slate roof is going to remain. We're going to clean it and we're going to inspect it. So there may be parts that we'll want to replace and update. If it's faulty, so we're going to repair it if we need to. The intent is that the majority of it or all of it will stay there if it's in good shape. The new roof, the new addition, will have a slate roof. And we're gonna match the color and we're gonna match it as best we can.
I assume we're just talking about the part that's got the very steep pitch, the shallower pitch top part.
Top part
Typically-
doesn't have slate.
Right, correct. Okay.
Right.
What do you know what material that will be on the top flatter part?
It's likely gonna be, I believe, that's a good question. We're gonna match the top. So just to back up a little bit, you're asking some technical questions, which are fine. When we go to these into these meetings, we try to answer the big questions to
Right.
get through the historical questions. We don't get into the details until we get passed through, because it's a significant amount of work. And if we get denied for whatever reason, and it's not
I
just
see.
the historical commission, it's the zoning board or conservation commission, any board that we go before, we try to put enough information so that we can answer your questions, but we don't do all the detail work. That is a good question. So typically they're rubber because of the shallow pitch. You
Right.
can't put a slate and you can't put an asphalt shingle on it
Right.
because it typically doesn't meet the manufacturer specifications.
Right.
So if you're asking for an answer today, I'm going to say rubber.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty likely. I should go look out my window because my neighbor has a house that's got the same details, same design, very, very similar. In fact,
Yeah.
there's two on my block. His is clapboard, the one up the street is brick, like you say, like as you pointed out earlier. So I should just try to take a look. I think his might
Well, in
be
some older
rubber.
houses, I mean, rubber is a somewhat new material. So in
Right.
older houses, they use bitumen. They use,
Right. Right.
it's almost like an asphalt product, but
Right.
it's a sheet good.
Right.
So it might look different. At today's standards, you're not really going to see it. It's got such a shallow pitch on it
Yep.
that I'll say I'm gonna advise my clients to do rubber.
Yeah, okay.
And patch the existing if it needs. We'll go through it, and flat roofs tend to, while we're up there, flat roofs tend to weather faster than pitched roofs. So we'll probably, while we're here and discussing it, we'll probably want to assess. And I haven't been up there. The contractor will need to do that. Assess the existing flat roof portion of this,
Yep.
and likely probably repair it while they're up there. It would make sense to replace the
Mhm.
top roof.
Okay,
and
yeah,
do
we
a
don't need to
consistent-
belabor it too much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think, Mr. Chair, I think that we went all the way around the building. So the applicant would request that you obviously make a determination of historic significance, that you make a determination whether or not it's preferably preserved. And if those two are yes, that you then approve the proposal and release it from demolition.
Okay, well, we'll take those one at a time. Typically, what I do is meet, as you might recall, and we'll get to it in a minute. I see a hand up and so on, so Joe, we'll get to you. But typically, what we'll do is I'll make a motion. I'm not making the motion now, but the motion will be to the point of, is it historically significant and preferably preserved? And if that's anything other than a yes, then that's the end of the story. If it is a yes, then we'll move on to the demo plan review and so on. So Joe, I see your hand up. Mr. Morgan, did you want to say something or ask a question or?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you would allow me, I'd like to ask a couple more questions of Mr. Nolan about the drawings. If you could go to the south elevation, please. Demo scope. Actually, no, new construction proposed. Sorry. The south elevation, there you go. Below the mudroom, there is an unenclosed area. I believe that mudroom is supported on piers and it's enclosed with a lattice. How do you plan to treat that area? Are you going to just extend the lattice and provide another pier to support the mudroom extension?
Could you, do you have an exterior picture of that side? Could we go to the exterior picture of that side?
Yes, there is one.
Think about it. Try the one right before that. One might be a little too close. I guess it's too close.
I think you're looking at the bump out. Is that correct?
Yeah, just looking at
Yeah, the bump out. Yeah.
not,
Yeah, to the left. of
Not
that
the
one.
back, not the back, the side addition. The Jallow windows are.
Yeah, well, that's
There
the
it is,
bump
right
out
there.
there with the
That's
lattice.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it.
it's hard to see the
See
whole
the corner
thing.
pier there.
Yeah. I'd like to do something a little nicer than lattice, to be frank, and do some type of a skirt there. But yeah, again, we haven't done the construction details on this, so we wanted to make sure that we got approved for this first, and then we're going to go through and do our next level of drawings, which are the technical drawings. But so it's in some ways a little bit mature, but I understand that you need these questions answered. So I would recommend building this on piers and infilling that with some skirting.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is I'm not sure that was original construction. It looks like it may have been an add-on. I don't know, but so I mean, you think that they wouldn't have built original construction on piers and put lattice infill because it's just open, non-conditioned space below.
Yeah.
Likewise, on the north side, there's a small entryway that sits, from what I could see, it sits on steel pipe. It doesn't even have brick piers. So
Yeah.
it looks like it's very temporary, and I don't even know if it's compliant with code, frankly, but hopefully that doesn't need to be demolished in your work.
It does not.
Very good. Also, just a couple of comments on your elevations. If you would go back to that south elevation for proposed. Just a couple of notes. It looks like you copy pasted the side elevation of the dormer. That should probably go away. The one that's facing onto the east on the existing building, because that's going to get demolished, I believe. So
On this rear elevation?
yeah, so if you go into that, you see the side elevation of the dormer. That wouldn't be there on the to the right side of the existing roof.
That,
Can you show the side elevation, not this rear elevation?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's on this elevation. Excuse me. Yeah. So on there you go. So it's the right-hand side on facing east. That dormer profile should not be there.
can you go back to the
Am
rear?
I right?
Oh,
I
I
don't-
see. Yeah, I see what he's saying.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, if you look at the rear
Rear-
elevation, you've got also a profile, a dormer profile that shouldn't be there on the left-hand side of the south side, because that's there's not going to be a new dormer on the south side of your addition.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. So just if you could coordinate those elevations based on what your plan is, and even amongst the elevations themselves. But it's just to clean it up. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else on our commission here have a question or need a clarification or have a comment? If not, would one of my esteemed colleagues like to make a motion that the structure is historically significant and preferably preserved? I'll tell you what, I will make such a motion.
I will second it. I will second it.
Okay, so the motion is that that the structure is historically significant and preferably preserved. It's been seconded by Ms. Pecknick. I'll start off by saying I am a yes on that. Ms. Pecknick, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, Ron Ziemba?
Yes.
Okay, Peter McNamee?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And are we missing anyone? We got Ron, 2, 3, 4. I think there was a fifth. Me, Patricia, Ron. Oh, Joe. I
You
didn't
voted.
record your vote.
Nope,
You-
I'm good. Yes.
Okay, I guess I just didn't write it down. Sorry about that. Okay, so that much is done. Now the presentation has covered much of the demolition plan. So this is so we enter the phase where we consider that. And before I open it for comments from the public, if any, if you are an attendee member of the public, if you wish to comment during the public hearing section where we open that up, do use the Zoom feature of raising your hand so we know that you need to be allowed to speak and be heard and all that. Just before I do that, I'll give my fellow commissioners a chance. If now, Joe, is your hand still up from before, or did you have something new?
Sorry, Chairman Richards. I will delete it.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any concerns about the nature of the proposed plans and such as they've been presented tonight?
Sorry, Glenn, are we
Yeah.
doing public comment first or are we deliberating first? I'm confused.
No, we're not. I guess I was just asking for, yeah, let's do the public comment first. I think that's the usual
I'd
order.
like to hear, if anyone's
proceeding.
present, I would like to hear.
Yeah. All right, so let me take a look at the attendees list. I do see one hand raised. Caitlin, is that up to you to unmute those folks so they can talk?
It is. I've unmuted Tom Coulter-John.
Okay, so Tom, if you are muted locally on your device, you'll need to also unmute yourself so you can speak.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Tom Coulter-John, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. I have a couple of observations and perhaps a couple of questions. My question would be on the clapboard. You're getting rid of the asbestos on the front or all three sides, but what type of siding are you using to replace? That's one question. My hope is that it's not a synthetic material, that you might consider using cedar clapboards or a similar material, but that it not be synthetic. Sort of as a I guess, an overall general comment, I hate to see even though it's in the rear of this building, I hate to see that wonderful roof shape and so forth, the original disappear, the two dormer windows. And I'm just throwing it out there that I wonder if, couldn't you meet your objectives by building an addition below the roof line? You could still have 2 stories and perhaps expand it on those 2 floors rather than go up to the to the attic roof line level. That's just a suggestion on that because it also appears to be too large. If in the end you are granted by this commission, you know, what you're seeking to remove those two dormers, those arched dormers in the rear, I think that they're delightful and an important feature. And my hope is, and suggestion is that, you know, if you're granted permission to do this, that you take them out in, you know, as a single piece, or just move them out and reuse them because they're original materials and they have, you know, wonderful art to it and wonderful architectural details. So I think that ought to be reused if that's possible. One more comment, and that is you were talking about doing the rubber on the top of the roof section, which is fairly common now. One thing that often concerns me about those rubber roofs is they use a kind of an aluminum edging that sticks over the edge by about 3 inches, and not always, but often it looks ugly. So all I would like you to do is give some consideration to use some other material, perhaps copper or copper looking material, rather than the kind of exposed raw aluminum look that hangs down 3 inches. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coltrane. Looks like Stephanie Nikesh is also queued up, has a hand raised.
Hello, Chairman Richards. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. So Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I agree with Mr. Coltrane's comments. I have a question, and also I would just like to make a pitch for quality replacement windows. Marvin simulated divided light. That presents a very wide range of possible windows and materials for windows. There are true divided light products out there, and they are made from wood, which would be more historically appropriate for this building. If they are simulated divided lights, they should be muttons which have a profile, an appropriate profile from the outside at least, and are not pop outs, that they are actually adhered to the window. So that's my pitch for windows. My question is, when I look at the back elevation and the demolition plan, my eye sees a big difference between the amount, the width of that addition and the amount of demolition going on that side. So I guess my question is it really properly accounted for how much of that back wall will be demolished for the addition that appears in the elevations? Thank you.
Yeah, and that was, thank you, Ms. Nikitish. It was kind of what I was talking about earlier, and I know that the applicant or representatives for the applicant have been to the planning office to go through that demolition in detail with our zoning enforcement officer and perhaps others. I don't know if Caitlin, I don't know if you were involved in that or not. So there was quite a bit of, in fact, the reason it was continued was because there were questions about the how much demolition was happening. And as I was saying, you know, made my comment about the way the ordinance is written as far as when you are opening up a wall because you're building an addition to that wall, it kind of reads as if they don't count that as demolition per se, because you're not actually taking down a wall, you're kind of removing cladding and so forth to get to enable in addition, of course, there might be a piece of demolition where you're creating a doorway or that kind of thing. So that was my earlier comment to that, but I do appreciate the comments on the windows. I saw something in, and to those comments, Mr. Nolan, I hear what you're saying as far as wanting to get some feedback or get some at least preliminary approvals or whatever before investing more time on a given project or the specific detailed plans and technical plans. But calling out materials is normal. I had the same question myself on the clapboard cladding. That's the kind of thing that the Historical Commission is quite interested in, and as that we are with windows. So that type of that type of stuff, and I think I saw on one of the pages, I don't remember which ones, I think it was Marvin, I forget what series or whatever, but there was something about a brand and type window. Can you tell us anything more about specifically about the windows you plan to use?
Yeah, so it is the simulated divided lights. That's what we're looking to do, and it involves an SDL is a mutton bar that's adhered to the outside. It has a grill between the glass, and it has adhered mutton on the inside, 2/2. And
so it's a three-dimensional mutton, so to speak.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So it truly mimics the true divided lights. Not looking to do true divided lights. The windows that are there don't I believe. Well, actually, I don't want to say that because I don't know for certain.
Yep.
So that
They're also wood built. They're aluminum clad, but wood inside. Is that correct?
yes.
So on the interior, the exposed surface is wood. But on the exterior, the exposed surface is aluminum. Is that what that means?
Aluminum clad. Yep.
Okay.
And they're high quality windows too. But they're not like that contractor special.
How about do you know, has the siding been specified yet?
Lisa, do you want to answer that, or you want me to?
So the siding, I believe the clients have chosen the hardy plank siding with they're going to do as Bill said earlier, the clapboard 4-inch reveal.
Okay. Yeah, you might, I know Mr. Coltrane has mentioned, raised an issue about hardy plank, and so I looked that up because I hadn't heard anything about that, and there actually either is or was a class action lawsuit about hardy plank siding not living up to life expectancy and this and that, and of course it's there claims and counterclaims. Well, it wasn't installed properly, or it was, or it wasn't, or whatever. So it might be worth considering. And I'll share with you that when I did one side of a historic part of my house, my contractor found that there was a manufacturer that made cedar clapboards that are not only pre-primed but pre-painted, and I think they carried like a 30-year warranty or something like that. And I know that in fact, I just replaced some siding on a newer section, which is still over 100 years old, with cedar clapboards. And the ones I was taking off, some of them were cracked, but most of them were still, it's been, let's see, about 130, 140 years. So I wouldn't dismiss cedar siding out of hand. It's quite durable stuff. Anyway, now please lower your hand unless you've got something new to say. And let me go back to my panel here. I see Commissioner. Well, first of all, let me actually, but just one second. Hang on just a second, Patricia. Was there any other member in the public that needed to speak? If not, we can close that part of the meeting.
Chair Richards, I would say there is one phone in caller, so I would just ask the phone caller if they do want to speak to press *9 to raise their hand.
Okay, we'll allow a couple of seconds. And Stephanie, your hand is still up, just so you know.
I do.
Oh, did you?
I do know. It's intentional. May I just say one thing about the demolition plan versus the elevations? So one of my concerns, and this has come up more than once, is the demolition plan is actually, so that amount of demolition is what you're reviewing. And I understand that the applicant wants it to not get beyond, to trigger the DCOD. Fine, if it doesn't, it doesn't. But at the end of the day, if more demolition is done than is on this plan, it's a problem. So I just want to make sure that, I just want our boards and our planning office to make sure that we're not fudging numbers for any reason, because when it comes to actually demolishing parts of this building, it should be important. It should be enforceable. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Mr.
Stephanie.
Chair, if I could just address that just for a moment. So we take that very seriously, as well as does the architect, which is exactly why we continued this meeting last time, because there were some points raised that were valid points from some of the members of the commission to the planning office. So we went back and looked at everything again. You'll note that this applicant, for example, is counting those cheek walls that are being removed on the dormers, that on the sides of the dormers, as small as that number is. So we were very careful about that, and actually the architect did a lot of work on it. And then we had several conversations with the planning office over the calculations and the numbers and what was happening, what was not happening. So nobody's trying to fudge anything here. People are trying to be very upfront to make sure that it's properly counted in accordance with the ordinance. And the applicant has gone to great lengths to make sure that that has happened.
Yeah.
And
that's
if I
what I
could just add one thing, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We took a conservative approach with this too. So in all of our calculations, we're meticulous. We talked it over with the enforcement agents, and we rounded up when there was any rounded up when we could. So we took a conservative approach at this too. So.
Yep. Yeah, and some of you may already notice that it's a kind of a hot issue these days, because there's one case that's very much in the public eye right now about demolition that went considerably beyond what was expected. But what you, Ms. Mead and Mr. Nolan, what you two have both just said is exactly the same thing that I have heard from the planning office. So so we appreciate that, and so I feel pretty comfortable with your estimates on that. And so, Caitlin, I'm assuming that the telephone caller did not *9 or whatever it is, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing part of the meeting, and I'll turn to my fellow commissioners. I believe you wanted to say something, Ms. Pecknick.
Yes, and I believe that this is the beginning of our chance as commissioners to deliberate on this. And so I would appreciate if we had the opportunity to do so. And maybe at the end, if you'd like to hear from the applicant again, that would be great. But I would like to address my comments to my fellow commissioners for now. Other than saying to the applicant quickly, the technical questions are the big questions for our commission. So, if it was going to be a gingerbread roof instead of a slate roof, that's the kind of stuff we leave to discuss. So I'm going to suggest to my fellow commissioners that I will be making a motion to impose the demo delay so that the applicant can come up with a solution that is not as detrimental to the historic structure. The proposed roofline profile would negatively impact the historic house. The addition should be at a lower roof pitch. The replacement addition should be subordinate in height. In other words, in the main building, the way the current addition is. The third or upper story rear windows and window surrounds with their projecting dormers should be preserved. I wouldn't object to the rear elevation exceeding the footprint in length, as long as it's not wider than the addition proposed and as long as it isn't higher. There are a few of these Second Empire houses in town. Some of them have retained their original massing and profile. Others have been very overbuilt. So I would like to see a list of, what's an example of an existing feature, the restoration of which may not be possible and would need to be replaced. What is the list I would need to know in advance. I think it's very broad to say existing house will be maintained with existing features, being refinished where possible, replaced with appropriate items to maintain a second Empire style cottage. So I would like to know more about this in writing. What parts of the roof would be replaced as needed? What is the process for determining the need? And finally, I'm saying this generally about demo. I don't, because I don't object to the demo of this addition, but I would like to say going forward, when applicants say that things are in disrepair, that's not a standard for demo. Disrepair is not the standard, or that the building doesn't adhere to current building standards. You know, it's an historic structure. And that, you know, there's speculation that if you remove materials that you find more problems for safety reasons. Going forward, I would like to you know, hold people to higher standards than saying that things are in disrepair. So again, I don't object to the demo. I don't object to a new addition, but to me, it cannot be a full third story that takes out these windows where they're projecting dormers. And I need a lot more detail about what is going to be preserved and how decisions will be made about what needs to be replaced, and more specific lists of materials.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Anyone else? Your hand is still up, by the way. Yeah, thanks. Anyone else on the commission or have an opinion would like to weigh in on that? Sounds like, Patricia, it sounds like your point about that upper story is similar to Mr. Calder-John's comments about that, you know. And while I'm waiting to see if anyone else has a comment, I'll just say that, you know, when I look at the elevation, the proposed elevations, particularly if you're looking at it either from the north or south, north or south, you can kind of, like this one, it looks like, how do I explain it? The style is fine. The style is, you know, you've been consistent with the style. The problem is the massing, in that, you know, I don't think I've ever seen a house like that. I know, you know, where you have that mansard style or type of roof that and kind of an L like that. I don't know, it's just a bit odd. I do, you know, having said that, I do certainly appreciate the intentions to either keep or restore and have things in keeping and faithful to the architectural language and style of that period. So that, you know, that's certainly a plus. And you know, in those respects, one could say that, you know, to do some of these things is going to be an improvement. But I have similar reservations to the two you've already heard about, that third story in the back. I don't know if the solution is to, instead of having the deck, have, you know, additional floor space there or not. That may or may not, you know, I don't know what your overall plans are, you know, as far as you know, your interior requirements, but just a thought. So yeah, I think that third floor or second floor, depending on, I guess we'd call it, I guess it's the second floor in the back, is somewhat problematical. So no one else on the, you know, Joe or Peter or Ron, any comment from, okay, Peter, I see a hand go up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I hate to go against the last two speakers. I don't have as big a problem with the third level. I look at particularly this elevation, and for me, certainly its massing is big. There's no question about that. But this is a perspective that we're not going to see from the street, and also I think it's accentuated by the significant drop off from the street level down to that back level. So I think that's sort of, we're basing everything on the facade of this building, and everything on the facade is going to be retained and improved even with the replacement of those two doors. And that's the smallest face the building presents. So I think we'd be wise to remember that the addition in the back, which is going to be largely invisible to most everyone, is certainly large by comparison to the face, as is anything else. Even the sides are larger. You know, there's more surface area presented on the sides of the building. So I don't have a problem with the third story. I do agree with Mr. Koldejon about the windows. It is a shame to lose those, but I think that I would be just as happy to see them repurposed on the building on the end of the addition, or even just preserved and, you know, made into architectural salvage, you know, just so that they don't end up in a dumpster, because they are significant architectural features. But again, because this is all in the back of the house and this does need to be a livable space, I think the third floor presents a good solution to that need. I also have a problem, as everybody else does, with the materials selection, or the lack of specificity about the material selection, particularly with regard to the siding. I'm not a fan of the hardy plank siding. I don't like I think it looks like a modern material, and I see this building as this, we don't have any corner boards or anything along those lines, so the siding is going to be need to be installed properly and mitered properly and meet each other in a neat corner. And with the hardy plank, it's just going to alternately overlap, and that's the sort of thing that sticks out to me. Not unlike the asbestos that's on there right now has alternating overlaps. So I would put in that this really does need to have the wood clapboarding.
Thank you, Peter. And I had actually thought of that. I know I didn't mention it, but I had thought while Mr. Nolan was speaking about the removal of those two windows in the back that, gee, maybe that, since they're having the same style windows on the addition, just use the old material, but I know from my own experience that it can be rather challenging to remove stuff, especially old stuff, in a way that doesn't damage it to the point where it really, you know, it's hard to reuse it. But it's not impossible, and it could very well be done. Joe, I see also your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Peter said just about everything that I was going to say.
Okay.
I agree. The datum, really, we should be really thinking of this as ground level at the front elevation, as that's the way we would really perceive it. I believe that the proposal is pretty good at preserving the front and the sides of the building. The exterior, you know, our eye is tricked by the fall off on the grade. But I think that what's being proposed is actually pretty reasonable, even though it does impact the most sensitive part of the historical part of the building, which is the roof and the dormers. So I would say, again, I would reinforce what Peter said by saying that the details on the front, the woodwork, the brackets, all of the wood work should be properly restored. If we could have some more detail on that and exactly how that's going to be done, rather than, as Commissioner Pecknick said, just sort of a gesture toward as needed. We want specific commitments as to what's going to be done on those existing dormers and brackets and the entry wood detailing. I'd like to know more what's going to happen with the gutter system. It looks like it's concealed behind existing eave profiles. But if we could have more detail on that, and as the architect said, that's coming, but it would be nice to see it now. If we could have some more direction on just what those details are, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable in what they're proposing as an addition.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And Ron, I see you have a hand up too.
Yes, I just want to mention that I do agree with the last two speakers, Peter and Joe, about that third floor.
Okay.
I think that the fact that the perspective that we're most interested in is from the front, from street level. And I see no problem with it in that respect. Also, I think I agree with Mr. Coulter, John, on those windows and from the back. It would be a shame if they had to be discarded. And I don't know, I can't think of, just looking at the various exposures now, I can't think of anywhere to use them, but it would be nice if we could find a way to use them. That's all.
In theory, they could be used on that second floor of the addition but you know, again, if they can be removed in such a way that they're you know, salvageable for that.
Yes.
Now, Joe and Ron, your hands are still up. But were you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we could take a. I think that we should have the applicant come back with those additional details. We could go ahead and have a. It probably would actually be in the applicant's advantage in a way to say, you know, to. I don't want to. I hate to use the expression "start the clock," but impose a demo delay now. But you know, as the applicant, I'm sure, or the representative surely knows that doesn't necessarily imply rejection so much as the coming back with some updated plans that we can then give a final approval for. So, yeah.
Can I ask a proceed? So for us, it would be very helpful. So I've just heard the majority of the commission express specifically that they're fine with the addition on the rear.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's important because if we're going away, I don't want to go away, not redesign the rear and then come back in that, right? So if we can have that direction, so I'd like you to impose the delay. If we could have that direction, that would be good. And then be clear that you want an answer on potentially either having those windows reused in the rear or being able to preserve them for architectural salvage and donation.
Can I answer that now, Lisa?
Sure.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. We can, as the chair correctly pointed out, you always run the risk when you're removing something to repurpose it that it gets damaged. But it's in our best interests actually, because those are the most expensive details to try to replicate and the hardest to replicate. Mm-hmm. It's in our best interest to reuse those. So by all means, that was always the intent. Those arch details. Right. I mean, you know, obviously not every bit of it, not every stick of it. Right. The framing behind it is probably going to not be salvaged, but all the architectural details, it's in our best interest to reuse that. And with regards to,
no, go ahead.
So that was, I didn't want to interrupt, and I thought we were going to get a chance to react to the questions, but that was our intent right along. I don't know. Do you just need us to put that in writing on the plans, or?
Right. So that's what I was going to say, Bill, is that so then the other thing to be clear of is that you would like much more detail instead of our overall note saying all of the detail and the brackets and everything will be saved. That's fine. And the you need an answer on the clapboards. I think I did hear folks loud and clear on that. I understand that there's a preference. I hear that, but there's no regulation, there's no policy, there's no ordinance relative to siding materials, and it's very difficult for folks to, or not very difficult, but people have different preferences, and it's like picking a color, right? It's a siding issue. So I hear what you're saying. Relative to using, hardy plank versus cedar clapboard or whatever kind of wood clapboard. But it really, quite frankly, from a notice perspective, other than a preference, it's not fair to applicants. And you know, there's no rule governing it. So, you know, it's an issue. We'll take it back to our client. So more details on the side, on the details being preserved and saved and refurbished on the main part of that Second Empire House. Being clear that we're going to reuse the windows, and an answer on the clapboards. So we can come back with that.
Okay, and a couple things, Ms. Mead. I would agree that in fairness to you and your applicants, it would be good for you to get us a clear sense from the commission that that second story of the addition is okay. So we can try to clarify that. And based on what I've heard tonight, you know, it looks like that is the sense of the commission. I'll be honest, I was kind of sitting on the fence. You know, I totally get what I heard from Joe, Peter, and Ron on that, and, you know, had similar thoughts. But I also understand Ms. Pecknick's reservations and so on. So, but it looks like like I said, the majority doesn't feel that is an impossible or an unacceptable thing. I would, however, disagree with your characterization on the cladding as a preference, because we're supposed to try to enforce the Secretary of Interior standards and to try to maintain this this sense of historical whatever. And I forget who it was. I think it was Peter that, you know, pointed out about the corners. It might have been, I forget who it was. I'm sorry if I mischaracterized that. You know, where there are no corner boards, you know, it's difficult for me to see how you can even do a clean corner with hardy plank, you know, so that is something that you'll have to, you know, consider. I feel like I'll have to take a look at my neighbor's house. I think he actually, I think he has, believe it or not, corner boards that are, but they're not boards. They're almost cylindrical in profile or in cross section. But anyway, I digress. So yes, what you basically said is, as far as what we're looking for is essentially correct. So it's, if I understood you correctly, we should go ahead and take a motion on imposing the demo delay for now, and have you come back with the, you know, specifying precisely, you know, what we'd like to see is, you know, the additional details, right? What the window spec, the cladding or clapboard spec, and, you know, calling out the details of what's going to be preserved, and it could even like on the doors, for example, just says something that Second Empire cottage style. So I don't know how the other commissioners feel. Maybe that's enough. You know, is it going to look like what it is in these elevations? I don't know. So at least a bit more specificity, I think is the word, there would be really helpful. Does it? So does that help you, Ms. Mead?
It does, and it would be it would be great if you could have a vote relative to the rear second story too, so we knew that we were firm and going forward with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Is up. Can I say something quickly?
Yes, you can.
I'm going to channel Christopher Fay here, and and so I do appreciate what others have said about the fact that it's in the rear elevation, but our charge is not to protect the view of the house as it appears from the street. You know, we don't protect views, we protect the building. And I know the front facade is often our most important focus, but we are supposed to be protecting the entire house. So focusing on the facade, I'm not saying it's arbitrary, I think it's just overly narrow. And sometimes we do permit things that are hidden, but that doesn't mean that if they're you're not on the front, then sort of anything goes. I think that's something like what Chris would say. And I completely agree that we are, you know, we should be wary about advocating for changes to a house that are permanent, rather while thinking that at least the way it looks from one point of view on one facade may be similar or endure. So I think we're here to protect the house, not just one side of it as it looks. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Oh, and I just remembered something else, Ms. Mead and Mr. Nolan. As Mr. Morgan pointed out, please go make sure the various plans and drawings, you know, go through those so that, you know, we've got everything is consistent and accurate as far as what's actually supposed to be there. And if you can get either talk to, I don't know, whoever's in charge of these things, you know, what's going to be beneath the two bump outs on the sides that, you know, would be good to know. I'm not sure if that's a deal breaker. I doubt it, but you know, it's all stuff that's good to know. I'm trying to think which vote we should be next. Well, Patricia, let me think for a second now. I want to word this. Why don't I'll propose a motion that that the commission is not opposed, or maybe I shouldn't use a double negative. The commission does not object. I don't know. I can't figure out a way to propose it in the positive. The commission does not object to the addition containing 2 stories and thereby interrupting the roof line in the back, given the proposed way in which they intend to do so, which would maintain the stylistic features of that Second Empire style. So can we go around the commission and have, well, first we'll need a second for that, and then we'll take a vote on whether or not we are willing to permit that or not. Basically, the question is, are we willing, you know, that is a positive way of putting it. Is the commission willing to go along with that second floor in the addition as proposed? So a yes on this is that yes, the commission is willing to permit that. So I'll go around the horn, starting with say Joe Morgan.
Well, first you need
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
First of all, and then I vote yes.
Okay. Ron?
Yes.
Okay. Patricia?
No.
Okay. And Peter?
Yes.
Okay. And I think Patricia, you'll have to forgive me, but I'm gonna vote yes on this as well. I kind of sat on the, I can't sit on the fence forever. I'll have to come down one side or the other, and I have my reasons, but I'll go along with that this time. So now another motion is that I'll make a motion, put it to the floor, that the commission is going to impose a demolition delay and invite the applicant back with the additional details discussed to see if we can come to agreement and get final approval. Is there a second for that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Since you've got the mic, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Okay. Ron?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. Okay, so we're unanimous on that. So even though that kind of ends this matter for tonight, do you have everything you need at this point?
Yeah, we'd love to be able to come back to your next meeting. Hopefully it will be quick, given the given our request for continuance the last time, it would be fabulous if we could come back to your next meeting.
Well, I certainly don't object. You know, you can work with Caitlin on the schedule. I don't know that there's what's on the agenda yet, but if that gives you enough time, I know I can tell you that I don't object. I don't think the commissioners will either. So once you know, outside this meeting, work with the planning board on time, you know, getting on the agenda, and we'll see you again.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Nolan, as well. And thank you, members of the public who have contributed your suggestions. Now, the other items on the agenda are mostly around preservation restrictions, one of which actually is a bit unusual for us. Hopefully, my fellow commissioners have had a chance to review those. So we'll just take them in the order they're on the agenda. The first one is 272 High Street, the Thomas Emory House, so-called. Now, by the way, Ron, your hand is up. Is that just an accident? I guess it was. Is there someone who would like to speak to this particular PR? While I'm waiting for someone to either step forward or not, I'll just explain to my fellow commissioners that what I understand about this. The Newburyport, neither the city of Newburyport nor the Newburyport Historical Commission is a party to this particular preservation restriction, which you already know if you've looked at it. However, the city council, by ordinance, or there's a legal requirement that the mayor and the city council has to approve the preservation restriction, and then it goes on, I believe, to Mass Historical Commission. It'll be held by the the Historic New England, I believe it is. So that's in broad strokes the outline of this and why it's on our agenda. They're looking for us to take a look at that preservation restriction to see if we have any objection, or if it looks okay to us, to see if we have any recommendation for the mayor or city council. So Caitlin, do we know of anyone who, is there someone here from the Historic New England who wishes to speak or anything?
Hi, Glenn. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi,
can you identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Dylan Peacock. I am the Senior Preservation Services Manager at Historic New England. Would you like me to just briefly present the background behind this and what we're doing here? Hello, Glenn?
Sorry, I muted myself because I was making some noise.
Okay,
I forgot to unmute
I have
myself.
a little presentation, so if that's okay with you, I will give that now. Caitlin, if you'd like to open up the first slide, please.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see what's on our screen, but we are looking at, right now we've got Historic New England, your mission statement and vision. And if you could go through this relatively quickly, that would be great.
I'll go through it, yeah. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Historic New England. We're a nonprofit organization founded in 1910, oldest, largest, most comprehensive regional heritage organization in the country. If you could go to the next slide, please. We have 38 publicly accessible museum sites across New England, including a number nearby, such as the Dole Little House, the Coffin House, the Sprite Ilse House on High Road in Newbury, and the Spencer Pierce Little Farm on Little's Lane in Newbury. We also operate a nationally recognized preservation easement program to protect privately owned historic houses, which is why I'm here today. The easement program protects 114 properties across 5 New England states, including 3 in neighboring Newbury, including the Short House, the Ferry House, and the Seddon Tavern. If you go to the next slide, please. Tonight, I'm here to ask the Newbury Historical Commission to vote to recommend approval of preservation restrictions on the Thomas Emory House at 272 High Street to the Mayor and City Council. The Emory House is a lovingly restored federal-style mansion that originally dates to 1797. The building has had an interesting life, having been occupied by several prominent Newburyport individuals over its time, including James Parton, who's known as the father of modern biography. It also functioned during the late 19th century as a sanitarium for the treatment of narcotics addictions when Parton's widow Ellen leased the property to the Houston Care Institute from 1891 to 1895. And then right after that, it was returned to residential use and occupied by Newburyport or Gurney. The current owner, Kemble Woodmer, is seeking to protect this well-preserved historic property by donating a preservation restriction on it, which will be held and administered by Historic New England. Under the restrictions, the significant architectural features of the Emory House will be protected against alteration, neglect, and demolition, whether or not they're visible from the public right-of-way. Next slide. It will also protect important site features such as the 19th century carriage barn and the fence along High and Oakland Street. Next slide. The restrictions will also protect important interior features such as room configuration, framing members, plaster walls and ceilings, woodwork, flooring, banisters. You can see the banisters at the first and second story here. Next slide. We'll also protect fireplace surrounds, fireboxes, hearths, attached fireplace hardware. Next slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but reading through that preservation restriction, it seems like there's not a lot that's not protected, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, yep, door hardware, et cetera. All right, so final slide, please. It'll also protect timber framing at the house as well as in the carriage barn. So the protections apply mainly to the principal spaces at the interior of the first, second, and third stories of the main block of the house. The rear L, the kitchen and all bathrooms, as well as the north chamber of the main block, which was unfinished until the current owner, are all very minimally protected apart from structural members. So they're adaptable to modern living, along with, of course, all the systems and utilities at the structure. Just as brief clarification to what Glenn said, we do not need the city or the mayor's permission to record the restrictions. What we need is for their approval for the restrictions to be perpetual. Mass General Laws, Chapter 182, Section 32 requires approval at the state level and the local level for restrictions to be perpetually binding. Otherwise, we would have to record it after 30 years and then every 20 years thereafter.
Thanks for clarifying that. I was wondering about that.
So the state through Massachusetts Historical Commission has already reviewed the document and has provided preliminary approval. And now we're here seeking support from the Historical Commission to recommend approval to the mayor and the city council. And then after that, it goes back to Mass Historical Commission. They're just essentially waiting on the local approval to approve this. And just as last thing, all responsibility for enforcement is assumed by Historic New England. There's no liability on the part of the city. It's a private legal agreement between us and the current owner.
Yes, I noticed that spelled out in the PR, Dylan. So, I don't know how do you, attended a talk. I assume it was Mr. Kemble there. Is it Mr. Kemble or is Kemble his first name?
Oh yeah, it's Kemble is his first name, Kemble Woodmer.
Okay, yeah. I assume it was him. He gave, is he the one who's been resident there for a number of years and did the restoration?
Correct, yes.
Okay, yeah, he gave a talk down at the, I believe it was in the Customs House Museum. I don't know if any of my other colleagues attended that, where he had a slideshow and he talked about the restoration of this house, and it was quite impressive. Some of the things aren't mentioned in the PR, but are shown in the photographs. And I have to compliment you guys. I don't know whether it was the Historic New England or Campbell or whatever, who did the extensive documentation, and the photographs are very well done. It's really a kind of a glowing example of a preservation restriction. It's apparent to me that he is really, well, both he and the Historic New England are very meticulous and careful about specifying exactly what is and what isn't protected, and wanting to see to it that this house, now that he's restored it, I don't know, it was a combination of a lot of what he did had to do with making it more energy efficient and accommodating some more modern things like indoor plumbing and bathrooms, which they didn't have in 1797, and doing it in a way that was very sensitive to the historic interior. So I have a lot of respect for him doing that. I don't know how long your history with this particular project was, Mr. Peacock, but so maybe you're already familiar with that. Let me turn to my fellow commissioners now that I've been jammering on here. I see Ms. Becknick has a hand raised. Did you have a question or comment, Patricia?
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for all of your hard work on this. This PR, as the chair said, is a model. It's a beauty, and please thank the owner for us. It's a really big gift to the city. The historic preservation community lives for things like this, and I'm actually disappointed that the preservation isn't much longer, because that was what I was most looking forward to tonight. So thanks for going through these slides with us, and we will save the PR again as an example of how detail and so educational. It's amazing the work that went. Thank you for your hard work, and please thank the owner.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I hope I didn't make you feel like you're under intense pressure to be, very brief. My apologies for that, because as Patricia says, it is an interesting story, but we're not tonight. We're really more interested in the PR, and I agree with my colleagues' comments. It really is kind of a model. Now, this one, they typically won't all be this elaborate because they typically don't involve interiors and so on and so forth. This is a kind of a special case where you are trying to capture a structure both inside and out that has been very lovingly restored or preserved, or both, and maintain that as an exemplar for future generations, which, as preservationists at heart, we were all very delighted to see, naturally. Does anyone else of my colleagues have a comment or a question? Or if not, Patricia, would you like to do the honors of making a motion to recommend that the commission recommends to the mayor and city council that they we think they ought to give their approval to make this a permanent PR?
Yes, I'm honored to make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is that just to be clear, that the historical commission recommends to the city council and mayor that they give their approval to the what's the word I'm looking for? Recording, I guess, or to the preservation restriction, that they're okay with it being perpetual and so on. Is there a second?
Second.
2 seconds. All right, seconds and thirds. Okay, so let's go around the horn. Patricia, you have a vote?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. And Peter?
Yes.
Okay, and the chairs will vote yes as well. Got all 5. Okay, great. So since you were very brief, Mr. Peacock, I'll give you a chance. Was there anything else that you would have liked to have said if you had like another minute or so that you felt since I was driving you like a racehorse there to get through this quickly?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh no, that was the most of it. As you all mentioned, Kem has been a really excellent steward of the property for just so many years, and this donation of the easement is really a wonderful benefit that he's giving to future generations, so that these historic interiors are protected. So it's pass along your comments to him. But yeah,
we do appreciate it. And just out of curiosity, does he see any benefit from it other than knowing that this thing that he obviously cares so much for will be preserved? I mean,
can you hear what I'm?
Okay. You're still unmuted.
I didn't. All right. So he obviously has spent a lot of time and a lot of money, many years, just restoring this property. So it's more just preserving his legacy and the property. He's been a very strong advocate for historic preservation. I know he's a collector of antique furniture. He's involved with us in other ways in that regard. So yeah, he just has a real love of history. It was great doing the photo shoot there. Our photo shoots normally take several days because we're so, this is just a small photographs. All of them were in the restriction, but we photographed the whole property. So it was
Yep.
great just, being there over those couple days and getting to know him a bit better and chatting with him about, the
Yeah.
house and love, just in general. But yeah.
This is the most uplifting thing that has ever happened at a historical commission meeting in the year that I've been here. This is very, really.
Well, I'm so glad I was able to bring that to you tonight. And
bravo! Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and being a former avid photographer, looking at the details of how that was photographed, I'm familiar with enough to know that there was some pretty serious photography being done there. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Peacock. I appreciate you joining us this evening. I guess that being a Zoom virtual meeting worked to your advantage, and I don't know where you normally abide, but
I'm at Rhode Island, so this was really wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and good luck with the Thomas Emory House. And we will pass along our recommendation to the mayor and city council.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Okay. Thanks. Let me make just a note here, ladies and germs. So I capture everything. Well, I'm sure Gretchen will do it for me. Okay, the next one, People's United Methodist Church, 64 Purchase Street. Is there someone in attendance who to speak to that? I see someone's, let's see, Duncan, I think he was the one who was just speaking, right?
Duncan McBurney.
Oh, okay, Duncan McBurney. Okay, yes, and I recognize the name. I remember you attended our meeting. Oh, it must have been a while ago now. So thank you for working on this. So we have your preservation restriction. I see Caitlin has brought it up so that it's visible. Can you see what's going on? You can see what's in the Zoom meeting, right, Duncan?
I can.
Okay. Do you want to give us any? Okay, well, actually, let me just give a really, really brief background, and I'll let you speak, Duncan. For those, because some of our members are newer than your initial visit, which was before the wonderful world of Zoom meetings and all that. I can remember it now in the city council chambers. I'm pretty sure it was. And the background, in essence, is that the church is in application of, and I'm not sure if you can tell us if you got approval or not, but they're looking for CPA funds for some steeple repair and restoration work. I think it's specifically for the steeple and possibly the very noted weather vane perched thereon. And in exchange, but as part of the deal of getting CPA funds, they need to have a preservation restriction. So I know they came to us looking for some help. We really couldn't do much at the time. So why don't you take it from there, Mr. McBurney? Are you one of the officers of the church, Mr. McBurney, or just a member of the congregation?
I'm chairman of the board of trustees.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Chairman Richards. Also, I'd like permission for Tom Coulter-John and Stephanie to be able to speak in favor of or answer any questions you might have on this. As you know from our first meeting, I'm not too illiterate on architectural things, but I know the changes that have been made at the church, and it's happened over a period of almost 200 years now.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I know is from when I took over as chairman, roughly 30 years ago, my biggest project was this steeple project, which I had probably one of the best companies in the area, the American Tower and Steeple Company, to come and do that. And they've done a great and proper job. What happened was the animals were getting in there, and we had to replace all the trim around it that's six-sided. All the nailing boards were gone. The drip panels were rotted, which were replaced with good quality copper. And then I came to the board. You know, I knew nothing about that we had to do this preservation trust agreement. We weren't instructed that by the gal from the CPC when we first went to that meeting. We thought we'd just go in and ask for a loan and take it from there. But that's neither here nor there. So we're here now to present this, and hopefully Tom or Stephanie can speak. They're more knowledgeable on the issues here, so if you can, you let them do that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Did you hire either an attorney or someone else to assist you in putting together this restriction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, I will be happy to let either or both of them comment to this if they wish. We'll get to that in just a minute. I had a couple of quick questions that I hope you can answer. I did take a look through it, and it mostly looked pretty good. There were some things in particular I was very happy to see, which is that it was specified that although some of the trim and siding has been replaced with synthetics, usually you're allowed to replace with in-kind materials, but that there's an exception there that if those are to be ever replaced, they would be replaced with historically appropriate materials, not more synthetic. So I thought that was very good. Some couple of oddities. There was a $10. It mentions. I didn't note the page was probably back up from where you are now, Caitlin. Probably within the probably about page 2 or maybe 3. Why don't you try, let's try page 2, see if it's on there. Okay, that's page 3. Okay. Okay, yeah, here it is right in the middle of page 3. Now, therefore, in consideration of $10, that struck me as odd. I hadn't seen that before on these PRs. Was that, where did that come from, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Caitlin, I know you don't usually speak at these meetings, but I mean, would you agree that that isn't usually part of the deal?
That is, I have not seen that before.
Okay, so we may need to strike that. Another question, let me see if I noted what page it was. I think I did. Down in, okay, number 9, you see we're at 1 there. So it's down a couple pages, Caitlin, down to like number 9, talks, yeah, 7. Okay, there it is, 9, insurance. It says, grantor, oh, thanks. Grantor shall keep the building insured by insurance company rated A-. I think usually it's just A or better. And it says, or is current day equivalent. So I'm sure that's just a typo there. And the second line should be probably or better, by best, or probably should be, or its current day equivalent.
Through the conference, we are insured through Fred C. Church.
Okay, well,
we don't know their rating.
We don't know their rating, though.
Okay, all right, well, all right. What I'm pointing out, though, is not so much that as there's a little typographical error there, because as written, the sentence doesn't quite make sense. It says company rated A or better by best or is current day equivalent. It's just, it doesn't, there must be a typo there. Probably was supposed to say or its current day equivalent. That's all. It's a minor thing, but hey, my mother was an English teacher. I'm a good proofreader. I notice these things. Finally, way down towards the end, Caitlin, in 24B to be precise. Was it? Let me go back to my notes here. Talks about instrument executed in 2 counterparts, basically 1 for us, 1 for you, but actually you need 3 because 1 for you, 1 for us, and 1 for the registry. So that's another minor change. So let me see if that's and finally in the signatures, it's not usual for the entire commission to sign these. It's usually just the chair. So what I found was relatively minor corrections I think we could, easily do. But before, did anyone else on the commission notice anything at odds or unusual that they'd like to mention that they might have seen other than the ones that I've already noticed? Okay, I see a couple of hands up. Joe? Mr.
Sorry.
Mardini. Oh,
Sorry. I have a very small remark here. Just looking at the architectural description, I see that they're describing in their description of the tower, they describe a cupola that sits on top as 6-sided. And from just looking at the photograph, it looks like it's got 8 sides to me, but I don't know. It's other people can check that. It does look like the geometry just from the picture looks like the spire is 6-sided, and I think the gentleman just confirmed that the restoration work that was done did indeed work on a 6-sided spire, but I do believe the cupola is 8-sided. So thank you.
okay, we can check that. I made a note of that. Thank you, Joe. Patricia, is your hand up as well?
Yeah, I just want to know, maybe this is a question. You know, there's a beautiful building description. I think I was expecting a detailed list of the specific character defining architectural features that will be protected. Should we infer from the building description what is subject to the PR? Like, are there stylistic features on each elevation that are described that will, okay, so that's it. I wasn't sure if I should expect a list in addition to the, for like baseline documentation, the photo.
Yeah.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Patricia, this is Caitlin. I sent around the high school PR as an example, and that one did include that as baseline information.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I'm maybe spoiled also by the 272 High Street documentation. But I looked at the high school example, and now I'm expecting to see that and wondering if not having it is ever become a problem with these PRs. So that's my question.
Okay. All right. I think sounds like usually they are at least mentioned, particularly if there's particularly if it's something unusual, because there's sort of an implication that when it describes all these various things, and it specifically does say in the purpose of the whole PR that, you know, these appearances are not to be changed, and the historically significant features aren't to be removed or whatever. But yeah, I think it prudent, if not required, that at least the major ones or ones that are of concern be called out. Ron, I thought I saw a hand briefly. Did you have a comment that you want to make?
No.
Okay. Let's make a note here. Okay. So I have some suggestions on that. Now, I did say we would allow, I see Ms. Nekatish has a hand raised. So at this point, even though it's, technically not a public hearing, we'll acknowledge that caller, and your talking is permitted, Stephanie. So if you want to make a comment, you can go ahead now.
Thank you. I'm not really commenting as a member of the public. I'm the trust volunteer who worked with the consultant on getting this restriction drafted. So the church hired Eric Drake, who is a well-recognized Massachusetts preservation consultant. He does have a law degree. He's not a practicing lawyer, but that's part of his background in what he does for communities and for preservation, historic preservation, and he does a lot of PRs. So one of the things I wanted to mention about this particular PR is that you may not be aware of this, but what Massachusetts Historical looks for in a PR is kind of it changes in terms of what they want for language. So the template for this PR was a very recent PR MHC approved that Mr. Dre had worked on for the Woods Hole Library. And so in doing that PR, he had incorporated everything they were looking for. So the language, including the $10, is something that in that instance, Mass Historic was looking for. So my suggestion would be, because what will happen if you sort of agree to this as a draft PR that you would be willing to hold, then it will go to Mass Historic. They haven't seen it yet. And normally once they have it, they come back with comments. So of course, you know, anytime one of these is drafted, your goal is to have it go to them and have it come back quickly, so they won't have a lot of comments.
Right.
So if I may suggest that that changes not be made to the language, given that it was drafted by Eric Gray and based on a recently approved PR. So Mr. Morgan's question about the architectural description, I will go back to Mr. Dre and ask him about that. As to Ms. Pecknick's questions about what's being specially preserved here, if you look at Exhibit E, Exhibit E says everything. And then it becomes very specific about, as you commented on, where something had been altered, it will be restored.
Right.
And this is, I mean, I think this is an exceptional thing, especially for this church and the conditions under which they're doing this PR. So that in 2017, they did apply for CPC money to help with their, not do, but help with their steeple restoration. And the money was approved. They won't get it unless this preservation restriction is approved by MHC and you and the city council and mayor. So they won't get that money. I have to tell you, it's a very small amount. It's less than $9,000. It's less money than they requested. And we have many other churches in the city who have received far greater amounts of money for the same benefit that People's United Methodist is now coming to you with. So I think it's very fair to give them consideration that they're presenting this preservation restriction for a smaller amount, and I actually hope in the future they will go back to the CPC. Now that they're doing this, they'll go back to the CPC and get help more equal to what other churches in this city have gotten from the Community Preservation Act. So, thank you.
Thank you, and that's helpful, Stephanie. And right now I'm separately looking at page 22 at the first photograph of Exhibit D, and I have to agree with Joe that it does, looking at the geometry of the way the roof there's a square base of the steeple comes up and there's a roof there, and the four sides of the roof sort of have an angular thing where the top of it almost has to enter into an 8-sided cylinder there. Well, it's obviously an 8-sided, an octagonal representation. Anyway, yeah, so we'll have to take a look at that.
Okay. So I will also ask Linda Miller and Tom to look at it.
Sure.
You know, I also have to say all of this work was done during the pandemic.
Yeah.
When Eric Dre couldn't actually get here, so he did a lot of work by photograph. But definitely we can get Linda to look at it. You guys could certainly look at it, and so you know, if that's an error, that's an error we would certainly clean up.
Yep.
Otherwise, the language, I would sort of let MHC play with it if they want to. Otherwise, it's something they've approved recently.
Okay. Well, I think that should be, you know, checked, and corrected before it gets sent on. And so in the, well, I don't know what jurisdiction the other one that they approved was, but you know, the business about having the whole, every commissioner sign it seemed, maybe that's how they did it, but I know we've never had one that was like that. I'm not worried about the insurance. I'm sure they'll find that typo. They're good at that sort of thing. And the only other thing I think we should probably suggest that the $10 reference probably be removed, because I'm not sure the city, I think, see, it might delay things further to leave it in, because if Mass Historic doesn't take it out and it comes back to us, you know, we're going to object, so then I'll have to go back to Mass Historic again. See what I'm saying? So it might be faster and better to, you know, to take that out right up front.
Okay. I will ask Eric Dray for clarification about that, and let you and Mr. McBurney know his response.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's great. So what we can do, though, because I'm sure, I don't know exactly what your timelines are, but I have the impression that the sooner this is done, the better, because obviously it'll take time with Mass Historic. It'll take time to, I know, see people want it, but then it has to come back and be approved at the city level, and then it's got to be sent to the registry and so on, and all these things do take time. So I certainly appreciate the need to move expeditiously. So I think it's appropriate that we do take, I can't remember if we took a formal vote on whether or not we were willing to hold this PR, you know, to at least give it that level of approval to, you know, clean up the draft and send it along to Mass Historic. I think that's pretty much, I think that would be helpful for you guys to get that tonight, to get us on record as being okay with holding the PR and sending a cleaned up draft to Mass Historic. Okay, so
thank you, Mr. Richards.
What was that?
Thank you, Mr. Richards.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and make such a motion. So the motion is that.
Peter, sorry, Glenn. Peter had his hand up for a while.
Oh, did he? Okay, I'm so sorry. I had another window up, and it's.
Well, yeah. Okay, thanks. And me too. So.
Oh dear. So there I am driving it like a racehorse again. Okay, so Peter. You had a comment?
Not a major point, but I was going to address the question to you, Chairman. But Ms. Niketich brought it up and put it pretty well. With regards to that point of the $10, it doesn't sound like a major point, but it is a sort of point that does trip up contracts, and this is a contract. And contracts generally have an exchange of consideration. And what is being offered in this is $10, which is just a nod towards some value that's being exchanged for the restriction, or for what the grantee is making possible. And I believe that I saw, normally it's $1. When you have that sort of thing in a contract, it's a $1 consideration. I believe I saw that in the 272 High Street PR as well. And possibly in the one coming up as well. That's a very common thing. So the fact that it's $10, maybe it's updated for the 21st century, so that you can buy a cup of coffee instead. But I'd be wary about taking that out.
Oh, I mean, not having any dollar. Yes, and that's quite right. That usually is usually the nominal amount is like $1. I think that was. Do you remember what the one that we just talked about on High Street, the Emory House? Was that $1?
It was $1.
On that one?
Yep.
It was $1. Yeah. So they usually do have something in there. So yeah, I will agree that not to eliminate that nominal amount entirely, but you know, just, and maybe it was even a typo, who knows? But change it from 10 to $1. Just so I did, you know. Hey, you know, budget's tight these days. All right, I'm sorry. All right, so now I'm seeing also Mr. Morgan's hand and Patricia's hand up. So, okay, who wants
Patricia
to go
was first. Patricia went,
okay.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll
Go
be
ahead,
very
Patricia.
quick. I just want to thank the Preservation Trust for pointing out that the word everything really means everything. It was like a unicorn. I'd never seen it before. So thank you for clarifying that. And thanks for the work that you did with Eric Dre on this. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Very good. Now, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I see one thing I believe is different than other PRs that I've looked at, and that's in the paragraph 13 under inspection. This actually obligates the grantee, which is us, I believe, NHC. We shall inspect the property a minimum of 1 time per year. I believe other PRs do not commit us to that, and I just wanted to get clarification on that, because I don't know if this is something that we want to agree to or not.
Yeah, you know, I think I saw that sentence too, and it didn't quite register. Something struck me as odd about it, but it didn't quite register. You know, I'm still getting used to who's the grantor and who's the grantee, but yeah, we are the grantee. That's us. And that is unusual to require an inspection, a minimum of 1 time per year. I'm wondering if the wording was supposed to be something like shall be permitted, you know, a minimum of 1 time, you know what I mean? Like the grantee shall be allowed to inspect the property a minimum of 1 time per year. I don't know if it's that, if that's another thing if you're talking to Mr. Dre, Stephanie, can you ask about that as well? It's on page 7, paragraph 13.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Joe. That is an oddball one. Now, Mr. McNamee has a hand up, I believe.
Yeah, may I just add on to that maybe we just recommend modification of that language to the last sentence, say, grantee shall inspect the property no more or at a maximum of once per year. You know, it doesn't obligate the inspection to happen every year, and it protects the church from, you know, several inspections yearly.
Yeah, that would be fine with me as well. Because, and it's probably, I would expect that Mr. Dre, if his background is as you say, and I have no reason to doubt it, that he can come up with something that is appropriate for that works for both of us. But I think you understand the issue there, Stephanie, right?
I do. I mean, I actually think one of the issues is that you guys don't at least once a year inspect the properties you hold PRs to, but that's a different story.
Let's not go there. I'm not sure we've ever inspected any, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but we do want. But I think it is important that we do have the right upon reasonable notice, as it says, to check on that. You know, we're I'm not even sure we'd need to enter the property, although we might need to enter the grounds, but where it's mostly things that are all exterior. So
right, this is exterior only, so there's no need to actually enter the building.
Right. Yeah, but you know, don't want to trespass on the ground, so to speak. Now, I also see your colleague, Mr. Kolderjohn, I believe, has a hand raised. Did you want to make a comment or contribute to this discussion, Tom?
Just briefly, I can't really add anything specific to what Stephanie's comments were. All I could do is encourage you to vote favorably on this tonight and let MHC make the significant changes other than the 6 sides or 8 sides on that cupola. I would like to clarify one thing concerning the money, and you mentioned that, for instance, on Kem Widmer's, his mentions $1. There has to be some financial consideration or some consideration mentioned. His happens to be $1, but I know from you know, personal friendship with Kem that he's paying much more than that to protect his house forever.
Oh, I'm sure.
I would let it go through and then see what Mass Historic says. That's all. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, it's not, I don't really care the way so much that I just don't want it to come, when it comes back, to have, Andy Port or someone in the city or the mayor, whatever, say $10. It's always $1. Why is that? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to actually avoid further delay for the church and everybody involved. That's all. So so we can, certainly raise that. I think all the ones I've seen, and I'm not disagreeing with the bit about having to, or as kind of a legal requirement for that consideration. Yeah, that I think we're all agreed on that. That's just the amount. In fact, I often wonder if anyone actually hands over $1 or not, but that's another story. Okay. Anyone else feel? Let me check I see. Okay, I don't see any hands at this point. So let me see if I can succinctly phrase a meaningful motion here. The motion that I'd like to put before the board is that the Newburyport Historical Commission will accept a holding of a preservation restriction for the People's United Methodist Church at 64 Purchase Street, and is in favor of the amended draft being forwarded to Mass Historic for review. By revised draft, I simply mean basically the one we're looking at with those few corrections that have been already discussed, such as making sure the description of the cupola is correct and so on. Is there a second for that motion?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Okay, so since you're there, Patricia, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. Okay, so we have approved that. So, Mr. McBurney, what that means is that Stephanie will talk to Mr. Dre. We'll make those pretty minor corrections to what you've got here. Stephanie, also ask him about that business about the commission signatures. I've never seen one ask for all of those, so just see what he says about that.
Okay.
And
I have to say, Chairman Richards, I have seen it. So
you have? Okay.
Yeah. But I will ask him.
Okay, you've seen that here in Newburyport as well?
I believe I have.
Huh, interesting. Okay, well, I'm the newbie, I guess. You've been around these things probably quite a bit longer than I have, actually. But anyway, all right, well, thank you, Stephanie. And I echo, I think it was Ms. Pecknick that commented that, that the Preservation Trust has done a good deed here, so to speak, by helping to work with them on this. That Novak Nikitish, is that by any chance related to you?
There are so many Nikitiches in Newburyport, I can't tell you. It's my husband.
Okay, yeah, so thank him for the photographs. All right, well, thank you very much. So we'll move right along as the hour starts to grow late, and we have more to get to. Thank you, Caitlin, for bringing back the agenda.
Chairman Richards?
Yes.
I'd just like to thank you and your committee, as well as the Preservation Trust Committee, that they've done a marvelous job of helping us out, because no way I could ever do it on my own. Well,
you're very welcome, Mr. McBurney. And we do, we do try to be sensitive to your position. By your position, I mean the fact that you're not a well-endowed, wealthy church. You're trying to do the best you can with limited resources, and we do try to be sensitive to that. And we do, at the same time, want to, and we love the idea of being able to preserve some of these landmark buildings in town. So we hope all goes well.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Have a good evening. Or you can stay with us if you like, but if you don't, have a good evening. Okay, there's yet another preservation restriction. 3 is the charm, as they say. This is 14 Titcomb Street, known to most of us as the Central Congregational Church. I think I saw in the attendees list Stuart Johnson, a name I recognize as being with the church. I didn't see Amantha I've been working quite a bit with her. She's the moderator, I believe. Mr. Johnson, I believe, is either, I can't remember if he's with stewardship or trustees, one or the other, but I'll let you speak in just a minute, Mr. Johnson, to this. So at a prior meeting, I kind of went through the chronology of this very long running preservation restriction. It's a little bit similar. Well, it's not a little bit, it's quite a bit similar to the one we just talked about, in that also CPA funds are involved. So the preservation restriction is being sought primarily as a condition of that. This version of the preservation restriction has gone through many revisions. So I hope you all got the correct one. And there was even a revision, believe it or not, today that I worked out between myself, Amantha, I believe it's Samantha Moore, the moderator, and the Michael Stieglitz, I believe it is. Hang on, let me get to my mail here. It's working out a kind of a final version of this preservation restriction. What happened was, and I'll just briefly explain what this last minute change was. Everything looked pretty good with this most recent description, the one that was posted on with our agenda. But where in the newer part of what they're calling was the 1910 portion, there was some of those windows have already been replaced. So, and it wasn't clear in the description of the structure that had taken place. And I thought it would be prudent and good that in describing the structure, that it be clear that in that portion of the building, quite a few of the windows were no longer original, but had already been replaced with similar but modern or contemporary newer windows. So what I can do is, when we get to that point, after we've had any other discussion, I can actually read you. It's just one short paragraph that we're going to insert to add that description. So having said that, I believe, let's see, Stuart Johnson, you're cleared to talk by the moderator, but you would need to unmute yourself on your device. And also there's a phone person. I can't see the telephone number, but I see talking is permitted and a hand is raised. Is that Amantha on the telephone? Yeah, you might. What's the code? Yeah, what's the code to unmute? Do you know what that is, Caitlin?
Yep, she's unmuted on our end, and you need to press *6. Amantha, to unmute yourself.
*9.
Ah, okay. There you go. Well, whatever it was, it worked. We can hear you.
Good.
Is that Amantha?
Excellent. That's good. Yes.
Okay, so you heard my little preamble there, correct?
I did indeed. I've heard the whole meeting.
Okay, very good. Why don't I let you speak to is there anything you'd like to say to us about this particular version, other than what I've already said?
No, just that we have added specific wording about which windows have been replaced, some of them as long ago as 1995 or so. We have no record of when that was done. Mm-hmm. And it's very concise wording that I wrote. Mr. Richards edited it somewhat, and Mr. Steinitz of the Mass Commission assisted with a little bit more putting it into paragraph form. And I don't have access to what you're seeing, but if you are looking at page 3 of the most recent, this afternoon's version.
Yeah, well, Caitlin doesn't have that. But I can explain, in fact, where this is going to go, and I can just read it because it's not very long. So,
right.
So why don't I go ahead and unless, well, either one of us can read it. So what we're talking about is third paragraph down, this is in the description of the 1910 portion, and it's talking about, you know, the second paragraph down is the west elevation, then the north elevation, and then it kind of ends with, or wraps up with, the building is more fully described in the series of documents and baseline documentation and exhibits B, C, and D, etc. So what we are going, what actually Amantha has already done, but Caitlin doesn't have this version. And the only change is that we have inserted between that third and fourth paragraph, in other words, right before it says the building is more fully described, we have inserted the following. Quote, 22, paren, number 22, original windows in the 1910 portion of the building have been replaced with similar but modern versions as follows, colon. East elevation, 1910 portion, colon, all 3 windows. South, semicolon, and if you want the punctuation, I can probably omit it. South elevation, 1910 portion, all 12 windows, 6 each on the ground and second floor. West elevation, 1910 portion, all 7 windows on the ground floor. All remaining windows on the 1910 portion, that is 9 on the north elevation and 9 on the west elevation, paren, those above the ground floor, close paren, are believed to be original to the 1910 construction. And then it continues, the building is more fully described and so on. So that way, right, as part of the description, we not only have the description that says there are 6, you know, or there are 4 windows, or however many there are in semicircular transoms or whatever, it also will know which ones have been replaced or not. And just to remind folks, the other main difference between this and the last prior version was that there was some, you might remember under number 6, which is probably like probably about page 5, Caitlin. If you want to skip down there, let's see. Okay, try one more page. Yep, there it is. Under grantors reserved rights not requiring further approval, under B, it used to say that where it says that maintain and repair according to the Secretary of Standards, and it had verbiage about making an exception for the windows. That was removed. Was there one other change, Amantha? I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I thought there was maybe one other change, but I can't remember offhand what it was.
The other one was a typo that you had noted.
Oh, right, right.
Which Mr. Steinitz agreed you had found an error that he had overlooked, and that was corrected in the previous copy.
Actually, I believe Ms. Nekatich found that. That was the one about grantee and grantor. There was a little transposition of those. Yes, so that was fixed as well. That was, yeah, again, that was just a typo. So at this point, I think we're in good shape, but why don't I turn to my fellow commissioners here? Does anyone have, I think what we're looking for is that we're okay with this being sent, that this is okay by us now, and we can, if I am, Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think where the particular ball stands is that if we are okay with the final revised version, that is, basically it's the version we're looking at right now with the addition of that bit I just read. If we're good with that, then we can sign off on it, or submit it to be signed off on locally, and then it goes back to Mass Historic for final sign off. But Mass Historic has already reviewed it, and they have given their sort of pre-approval that basically says if we're good with it, they're good with it. So it's up to us now to say we're good with it. So that's where things stand. Any comments or questions?
Glenn, it will also need to go to City Council for them to authorize the mayor to sign it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought by saying city approval, I'm sorry. Yes, that's part of the city approval. We sign off on it, and then it goes to both the mayor and the city council. I'm not sure what order that is, or if it even matters, but they both have to sign off. Oh, thank you, Caitlin. Any questions about this procedure, or the preservation restriction itself?
Hello?
Yep. Yeah.
This is Amantha again. Can you hear me?
We can.
Very good, thank you. I just wanted to say that this hopefully final edition of this one inserted paragraph has been pre-approved by Mr. Steinitz. He agreed that this wording would inserted in that location would pass their inspection and that would need no further review. There may have been other ways to describe which windows had been replaced, but he said that if it was in this written form, it would be approved in this manner.
Yes, thank you, Amantha. And I'll just get a little bit further clarification of what you're talking about for the rest of the team who wasn't on the email threads. What I said about going back to Mass Historic is still true in that they will have to get it back after the city has approved it. But what Amantha is pointing out is that Mrs. Steinitz, via various emails, has said that putting in this insertion that I just read is perfectly fine with them. In fact, it's really his edits to what we had. Amantha had given me kind of the inventory. I kind of wrote it up and formatted it in a way, based on my, training in communications design and all that good stuff with bullet points and so on, which I felt were easier to read. But hey, they like paragraphs, which I think my formatting was better, but I wasn't going to argue that point. Anyway, so it's actually his edits or his version that I just read. And so it doesn't have to go back to them for another pre-approval. If we approve of it, it can go directly to the city for approval and then back to them for the final approval. Hopefully that's your understanding as well, Amantha?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So if there's no questions, I would the chair would entertain a motion to have the commission approve the acceptance of the preservation restriction and send it on.
I move that we accept the present draft of the preservation restriction and send it to MHC for final review.
Okay, by present draft, just to clarify, as amended by the passage I read verbally. Correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. As amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it sounded like Peter. Okay. So let me make a note here. Approval of Central Congregation PR. Amantha, this is a long-awaited moment for you, I'm sure. So let's start with Ron, your vote on this?
Yes.
Okay. Stephanie, I mean, not Stephanie, sorry. Patricia.
Okay, yes, thank you, yes.
Okay. Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Okay, and a chair is yes. So at long last, Amantha and Mr. Johnson, if you're listening, you guys can finally, I guess, take a deep breath and know that your preservation restriction will be signed off by this commission, and I'll work with Caitlin or the planning office to get the wheels in motion to have the rest of the city approval taken care of, and then we will and things, however quickly or slowly those wheels turn, they'll turn, and we'll get this thing done. And Caitlin, I will forward to you. Let's see, did Amantha, did it go just to me? Let me just check.
I sent it just to you, yes.
Okay.
But I'm happy to send it out to Caitlin and Andy and you again, if that would make it easier.
That's fine. Just so we're all consistent, I'll go ahead and forward it to Caitlin and probably Diane in the planning office, and they'll do the necessary whatever. But yeah, I think we're good to go. Whew. Well, that was that took a while, huh?
We're almost there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks so much, Amantha, for working with us on that. I appreciate. I know this was a bit of a last-minute fire drill on the windows, but I think it is good to have that information in there. I don't think we'll ever regret including that. And so thanks for working with me on that. And I appreciate, he's not here to hear me say this, but Mr. Steinitz was really responsive and getting back to us very quickly via email. So that was very helpful. Okay, good.
Very quick today.
What's that?
He was very quick today on
Yes.
his responses.
Yeah, well, by email, if it's something quick like that, yeah, usually it's pretty good if it's just a quick, opinion like that. When it comes to reviewing a whole thing, yeah, that generally takes a little longer. Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Moore.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to the Historical Commission.
You're welcome. Okay, agenda. There was a correspondence on there. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Caitlin, but I'll very just quickly say there was a letter from this Lori Evans Daly about there's a cemetery up along Story Ave. You see it to your right as you're driving away from the city. It's hard to miss, actually. It's right by the traffic lights there for the Market Basket Shopping Center and the Port Plaza and so on. And it's the Belleville Cemetery. And also, I think there's one like a St. Mary's one. One of them has like a nice wrought iron fence. The other has this chain link fence, and there's probably one of those beautification committees, whatever. Anyway, they wanted to get rid of the chain link fence and do something like the historic wrought iron fence, but they initially said, is there someone from the Historic Commission that could lend their support? But then there was a second email that said, well, forget it. It's going to be too expensive. I don't think we'll be able to do it. So Caitlin, did they still want someone from the commission or not? I was unclear on that.
Nope, it sounds like for now they're gonna kind of set that mission aside, and maybe we'll revisit it later.
Okay. All right. So that's what that correspondence was. I don't know how many of you got to see that. Patricia may have as vice chair because she's copied on a lot of stuff. But in a way, it's too bad because I agree the chain link fence isn't particularly neither historic nor lovely. And it would have been great if, they could either, replicate. They probably not, it'd be really expensive probably to do wrought iron these days. There's some kind of alloy aluminum or whatever that they can make look pretty much like wrought iron until you get closer. So they might do something like that or whatever, but that's totally up to them. They were just looking for kind of support in their efforts, but that's pretty much a done deal. So we can move on to approval of minutes, I believe. Have people had a chance to review the minutes? He said, knowing that he himself has not done so.
I have done.
Yes.
Yes. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
You mean our exemplary note taker did her usual outstanding job? And
yes.
Okay, and I think I heard a second from, sounded like Peter.
Yep.
Okay. Make a note here. Okay, so your vote, Patricia?
Yes.
Okay, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, Ron?
Yes.
Okay, and also I'm going to blindly vote yes here because I didn't have a chance to review those despite my best intentions. I think that's it for our agenda. Does anybody have anything they need to get off the chest before we take a motion to adjourn?
Please, may I just say thank you. This is, none of us knew that, well, I guess Joe and Peter knew, not know we would be doing this remotely, and especially for not for this amount of time. I want to thank you, Chair Richards. I know that you're also at other meetings, the Planning and Development Committee meeting and the Zoning Board meetings, and that this is, see you, but you're very busy otherwise with Historical Commission business. And I know Caitlin and Andy are running all kinds of meetings until late hours of the night, every night, and everybody has a life, and sometimes it seems like a thankless task, but future generations will thank each and every one of you. And thank you, Gretchen, for yes, as the chair said, you're exemplary job capturing the minutes. So thank you, everybody. And that's all I want to say. I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, a couple seconds. Okay. Those, I won't, on some of these meetings, they just say, well, how does the planning board do it? They do yays and nays, and they kind of do it as, they don't do a roll call vote, but until I figure out how to do that, I'll just continue with my roll call stuff. All right, so Joe, I take it you are yes, since you seconded.
Yes.
And Peter, I take it you are as well.
Yes.
Okay, Patricia.
Yes.
Okay, I assume so. Ron.
Yes.
Right, and I'm certainly not going to go against the will of the majority. Hold you here any longer, and then we can all go and enjoy the rest of our evening, what's left of it. And thank you all.
Good
As
Thank you,
night.
Chair.
Patricia said, thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Good job.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Caitlin.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.